speaking to my colleagues, James Tucker, that out in the lobby area, we were talking about the first PIPA class. And it was back during the days of my friend Betsy Prince, and then followed by Cheryl Matney, who then served as the DD Council Executive Director. And Cheryl particularly had a real excitement for PIPA. And when she left Alabama, she went with the National Council. She invited me down to Florida for one of their national meetings to be their guest speaker, and we talked about PIPA. So it's exciting for me to be here, and it's indeed an honor to be here, and that you would have invited me to be a part of this special occasion, your graduation. When I was trying to think of what I would talk about, I asked James and some others, what should I talk about? And James says, self-advocacy. Talk about self-advocacy. So I saw Daryl just the other day at the department and said, Daryl, what should I talk about? He says, whatever your heart leads you to say. So those of you who work with me or have worked with me in the past, you know one thing I can do is talk. I didn't prepare a speech for you. I prepared some thoughts for you to talk to you about. And I wanted to just kind of reflect on what it is and what we feel and what we think when we talk about what you've embarked upon, a mission to embrace and to empower and to really promote self-advocacy. And I think back to the old times. And these are the times you heard Daryl refer to when we closed institutions in Alabama. And we created opportunities for people to come out of the shackles of hospitals and state facilities to come into communities and be a part of community homes. It was also the time that we really started the self-advocacy movement. If I'm correct, that's when we started People First in Alabama, and we created chapters all across Alabama. And then we had the slogan, the campaign back then, if you recall, in the late 90s, where it was the campaign brochures and all the things across the state. The billboards would say what? See my abilities, not my disabilities. You may recall seeing those billboards, and James will remember for sure when we worked to create and really establish a powerful voter education and registration movement. Now I'm gonna tell you what that meant back then. There's, think of the late 90s, 2000, when, again, we still had institutions. I'll never forget, I think it was Tuscaloosa, where we were organizing, and we were registering people in the institutions to vote. And somebody said, well, why are they registering those people in the institution to vote? As we said, well, they have a right to vote. And they said, well, we're going to get them out to vote. But one lawmaker figured it out. When he looked at the hundreds of people we had in institutions, what did he see? A block vote. And was he there at the count? Yes, he was. And I share that with you because while those are days of old, those were the days where there was a lot of excitement about the power of the voice, your voice, the power of those with lived experience, not our power, but your power. It was also the time, as Daryl mentioned, we created the first consumer empowerment office, both within the mental health side of our house and the ID side of the house. And again, great excitement during those days. But again, it's about putting your voices where they need to be. But that was back then. That was, what, 20 years ago. I've been around a while, as you heard, and somehow I've found my way back to where I started in this movement, back home in Alabama, with the Alabama Department of Mental Health. And strangely enough, I find myself back with the Division of Intellectual Developmental Disabilities, also where I started my career in Alabama. When I first came back from Arizona to Alabama, I was up in Region 1, the northern part of our state, and I served as director of our Regional Community Services Office. And then we were responsible for the 13 northernmost counties in Alabama to develop community opportunities and resources and programs and services for people coming out of the Lurleen Wallace Center. And I remember we collaborated and partnered with anybody who would. And we went to churches and we beat the bushes with DHR. We didn't have a lot of rules back then. We made our rules as we went along. And we developed foster homes and all, we had something called home training services, all the things we try to do today. But the point of that was we then started to recognize we needed the people we serve in the planning tables and in the boardrooms. So when I became commissioner of the department, those of you who were around back then, the thing I always said is, I need your voices at the table. I need your voices in the boardrooms. I need your voices before we consider policy. And we were big about quality improvement. What is quality? And I said, well, we sit around and we have all the professionals, defining quality. Quality is this. And then, the thing we are good at saying is best practices. I always say, and I would say in DC, the best practice is what's best for DC, and the best practice is what's best for Alabama. And quality is only defined by whoever receives the service. I can't define what quality is for you. It's only you who can tell me what I do, is it quality? But that's back then. The voices were powerful. We had the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, NAMI. We had the Mental Health Association of Alabama. We had the Mental Health Consumers of Alabama. We had the DD Council. We had just created PIPA. But the thing about us, we were one. And that's what PIPA did. It helped to bring and cross all those lines and bridges and bring those voices together and see how forceful we had become. I come today excited to ask you to bring that back. Bring those times back again. You spent a whole year writing, learning about policy, been down to the state legislature. You've been around learning about services and people who shape things that are important for you. It's your time now. I hope you didn't go through this last year thinking you just go through a year and you get the certificate and you get a badge and you go forth and be anointed. It's not that easy. It's time for you to claim your rightful place. You need to now be the voice that's heard and the face that's seen. You need to really carry out the slogan that you've recently adopted across the nation. What is it? Nothing about us without us. Nothing about us without us. It's time for you to change the landscape of what is nothing more than a civil rights movement. That's all this is. Nothing about us without us. You should be in every boardroom. You should find your way through the halls of our nation's capital. You should find your way through the chambers of our state legislature. But I would caution you in your work that a loud voice by itself is nothing but deafening. A loud voice by itself is just deafening to listen to. I would ask you to think too, is that a loud voice with no actions, loud voice. harmless. I draw the parallels often to the civil rights movement because when you think of movements of disenfranchised, marginalized people, whether it's people of color, Black and brown, or it's people of various genders and orientations, whether it's people of abilities and disabilities, the movement's the same. You're fighting for your rights. I would promise you that if you look back in our struggles in the 60s, in our civil rights movement, the issues are the same. You're fighting to live in communities of your choice. We're still fighting in Alabama in 2023, not in my backyard. Not in my backyard. You're fighting to have affordable quality housing too, aren't you? You're fighting for jobs that pay you a living wage, real jobs, real wages. You're fighting for a decent education. And you're fighting for quality services and programs, just not something people throw at you and you should be happy and proud to have. But it takes more than just wanting something. It takes more than just talking about wanting something. Today, I challenge you to think about why you're here. I really do. And I challenge you to make a commitment. If you have any interest and concern and commitment for the well-being of people with disabilities and abilities, then I would beg you to make a commitment to change, to make a commitment to organize, to strategize, and then to mobilize to make a difference. Your power really is in your numbers. A collective voice goes much farther than that of just a single voice. Remember that power is never given up. No one gives up power. Power is to be taken, and it's yours to take. You say nothing about us without us. I would say to you, be the self-advocates, be the lived, learned advocates who've experienced what we talk about, and say nothing about us without us. And I say to you, show me.